The first reading today, it belongs to the prophet Amos, and he was a prophet that preached at 8th century before Christ, and at that time the Hebrews suffered a lot, especially those who were poor. Those who were rich and those who had power fulfill all his religious duties, but after fulfill with all this religious duty, they oppress the poor, trying to be more rich, trying to be richer, and trying to have more power. And so the prophet complained about these kind of people that apparently they were very religious because they fulfill all his religious duties, but really they don't care about the people. They don't care about the poor. And so Jesus, in the gospel, do the same. If you see the Gospel of Luke, the first preaching of Jesus at the synagogue in Capernaum, he said that the kingdom of God is a good news, and this good news is especially for the poor. And so the Gospel of Luke draw a picture of Jesus that is always taking care of what we can call nowadays social problems. Jesus was always taking care of the poor. So when we find this gospel that we have heard today, we have one parable and a long explanation of this parable. But what makes this parable difficult for us to understand is that Jesus put as an example to follow a steward that he was dishonest, a steward that didn't take care of the wealth of his of the wealth of the owner. So, and that was a very big difficult for us to understand this gospel, and all over the story of the church we have very different interpretation of the text because this difficulty. How could possibly Jesus put as example someone that is doing something wrong? And the same difficulty had the writer of the gospel. For this, if you compare with the gospel that we heard last week we have 3 parables and no explanation, Jesus don't explain the meaning of the parable. But here we have one parable and a lot of Jesus tried to explain the parable. So that means that the writer of the gospel found a little difficult to understand the meaning. For this, at the very beginning, we hear that there's a steward, and in the middle of the gospel, the steward become dishonest steward. That is the writer that is trying to figure out how he can understand this gospel. But for a better understanding of the gospel, we must know something about the parables in general. For us, for our reading of the parables nowadays, the parables are very short stories more or less simple stories. But when Jesus preached using parables, the purpose of the parables were something different, not just to deliver a simple story, but a challenging story. Jesus tried to push the people that heard him, push them to think a little further, to think out of the box, to think not just to repeat what the people normally say at that time, but to think different. And for this, the parables are, in some way, are a little illogic. For example, if someone steals something from us that belongs to us, when we discover that someone stole something, we don't say that it's a very good person. We say something different. We say that it's a bad person that used his mind in order to hurt others. We can try to make justice so that recover what we lost, and also perhaps we can be we can look for some revenge. So this is the normal way of acting if someone steals something from us. But in the parable, the owner do something that is not logic. He speak good about this steward. So the parables are in this way. Do the people that act there do things in a very difficult way, or in a very different way as it is normal to act. But the purpose of this parable for Jesus is to make us understand that God give us intelligence, and we must use this intelligence in order to be part of the kingdom of God. And so we can ask ourselves how we can use our intelligence in order to be part of the kingdom of God. And so for this, the explanation, the second part of the gospel, try to explain us how we can manage our wealth. And so Jesus said clearly that we cannot have two gods, God, the Lord, and the money. We can use the money that we have in order to serve others, and in this way we can make present among all the people the kingdom of God. So the gospel today, it's again bring us the question about how much we put in order to be part of the kingdom of God. How we use our intelligence in order to be part of this kingdom, and also how we use our wealth in order to make present the kingdom of God among all the people.